The air crackled with anticipation, a thick, humid heat that clung to every surface of the packed stadium. A single spotlight pierced the darkness, cutting through the haze of smoke machines and the roar of the crowd. Then he emerged. A creature of pure charisma, a rock god with a velvet voice and a devilish smirk. He moved with a feral grace, a panther stalking the stage, his hips swaying to the beat, his long hair a cascade of black silk. This was Michael Hutchence, the enigmatic, magnetic frontman of INXS. For a few glorious moments, he was the embodiment of every rock and roll fantasy, a figure of untamed sexuality and raw power. He commanded the stage and the crowd, a sea of adoring faces, hung on his every word, his every move. But what the world saw under those blistering lights was only a fraction of the man. It was a carefully constructed mask, hiding a soul riddled with shadows, a mind in constant turmoil. The very energy that electrified millions was fueled by a private fire, a volatile mix of ambition, sensitivity, and profound inner conflict that would, in the end, burn him to the ground. Born in Sydney, Australia in 1960, Michael Kelland John Hutchence was the son of a businessman and a makeup artist. His was a nomadic childhood, with the family moving from Australia to Hong Kong, a period that exposed him to a new world of sounds and influences. "We were a close family," his father, Kelland, would later remember, but Michael was always different, always a bit of a poet. He was a sensitive boy with a deep love for poetry and a burgeoning interest in music. He discovered his voice early, singing in a local toy store commercial, a fleeting glimpse of the star he would one day become. The constant uprooting, however, left a lasting mark. He never felt truly rooted, a perpetual outsider looking in. This sense of displacement, combined with the artistic inclination he inherited, began to shape the performer he would become, a chameleon, able to adapt and thrive on any stage, yet always searching for a place to call his own. His journey to fame began in a high school classroom in Sydney, where he met Andrew Ferris. The two bonded over a shared passion for music, and together with Andrew's brothers and other school friends, they formed a band. They were raw, hungry, and determined, a garage band that played every pub and sweaty beer hall in Australia, a baptism by fire that honed their skills and forged an unbreakable bond. Michael was the one who could walk into a room and instantly own it, guitarist Kirk Pengilly would recall. He just had this incredible, natural star power. Their sound was a unique blend of new wave, funk, and rock, a sound that felt both fresh and familiar. As INXS, they built their reputation on their explosive live shows, with Michael at the center of it all, a whirling dervish of energy. But the road to success was long and arduous. For years, they were a big fish in a small pond, a local sensation in Australia who couldn't quite break through on the international stage. Their breakthrough came with their fifth album, Listen Like Thieves, and its chart-topping single, What You Need, which finally gave them a foothold in the American market. But it was their next album, Kick, that would transform them into global superstars. Released in 1987, Kick was a commercial juggernaut, a perfectly crafted album of rock and roll anthems and seductive dance tracks. The videos for songs like Need You Tonight and New Sensation were inescapable, showcasing Michael's mesmerizing stage presence and the band's polished professional swagger. The world fell in love with Michael Hutchence, a man who seemed to have it all: the talent, the looks, the fame, and a string of high-profile relationships that made him a tabloid fixture. He dated pop princess Kylie Minogue, a relationship that was the talk of two continents. She would later reflect on their time together, saying he opened my eyes to so many things: art, music, culture. But it was a whirlwind, a public spectacle that, as with everything in his life, was not as simple as it seemed. His romances with supermodel Helena Christensen and, most notoriously, with Welsh television presenter Paula Yates were fodder for the gossip columns. But they also masked a deeper search for connection and a tumultuous emotional landscape. His love life was a public circus, but for Michael, it was a desperate attempt to find a love as intense and all-consuming as the one he poured into his music. At the peak of his fame, Michael was the quintessential rock star. He was the wild man of rock, a persona he embraced with a sly grin and a wink. But in a quiet, intimate interview with a journalist, he once admitted, "I get pretty terrified, to be honest, when I'm on tour. You really have to muster a lot of ego to go out there, which I find rather draining." This quote reveals the fundamental tension in his life, the public persona he projected, and the private man he was. He was an intellectual, a poet who loved the works of Jack Kerouac and Charles Bukowski, a man who was as comfortable in an art gallery as he was on a stage. This duality was at the heart of his artistic expression, and it was also the source of his deepest conflicts. The pressure of being Michael Hutchence was immense, and it was a role that, over time, began to consume him. The first crack in his seemingly impenetrable facade appeared in 1992. In a shocking, unprovoked assault in Copenhagen, he was punched by a taxi driver and fell, hitting his head on the pavement. The injury was severe, a fractured skull that left him with permanent brain damage. The long-term consequences were devastating. He lost his sense of smell and a significant portion of his sense of taste, a tragic irony for a man who savored life so deeply. More insidiously, the injury led to a profound shift in his personality. The gentle, introspective man his friends knew began to disappear, replaced by a more aggressive, volatile version of himself. Helena Christensen, who was with him at the time, would later say he changed so much after the incident. "He just wasn't the same person," she said. The beautiful, chaotic love affair with Paula Yates, which began in the mid-90s, only intensified the downward spiral. It was a relationship played out in the public eye, a whirlwind of passion and scandal, a bitter custody battle with Yates's ex-husband Bob Geldof that became a relentless media circus. The mounting legal and emotional stress was unbearable, and Michael, already struggling with the psychological effects of his head injury, found himself drowning. The final act of his life was a tragic descent into despair. The band was on tour, and he was back in Sydney, isolated and alone in a hotel room at the Ritz-Carlton. He was desperate to see his daughter, Tiger Lily, but Paula Yates had been prevented from flying to Australia with the children due to a custody hearing. In a phone call with Paula, he was reportedly told that a new court order meant she might not be able to bring Tiger Lily to see him for Christmas. The news was a crushing blow. His mother, Patricia Glassup, would later say that the call had pushed him over the edge. The next morning, on November 22, 1997, Michael Hutchence was found dead in his hotel room. He was just 37 years old. The coroner ruled his death a suicide by hanging. But for many who knew him, and for a legion of grieving fans, the truth was far more complex. His family and loved ones, including Paula Yates, adamantly disputed the finding, suggesting it was a tragic accident, a desperate act gone horribly wrong. The news of his death sent shockwaves around the world. The outpouring of grief was immense, a global cry of sorrow for a star who had burned so brightly and so briefly. His funeral was a star-studded affair, a who's who of the music and entertainment industry, but it was also a deeply emotional and private farewell. The legacy of Michael Hutchence is a complicated one, a mythos forever intertwined with his tragic end. He was a force of nature on stage, a poet, a lover, and a deeply flawed human being. His death, like that of many rock icons, has left a lingering air of mystery, a series of what-ifs that have fueled countless documentaries and books. But his most enduring legacy is the music he left behind. The songs of INXS are a testament to his talent, a soundtrack to a generation's youth, a collection of powerful, emotional tracks that will continue to resonate for years to come. He was a man who lived a life of exhilarating highs and devastating lows, a soul in constant motion, forever chasing a feeling he couldn't quite grasp. He was the wild man of rock and roll, the one who danced in the spotlight and sang to the gods. But in the end, the light that made him so visible to the world was the very same one that cast the deepest shadows. His life was a beautiful, chaotic poem, a searing melody of passion and pain. And in the silent aftermath of his final tragic performance, all that remained was the echo of a voice that had always been searching for something more. This documentary delves into the untold story of the INXS frontman Michael Hutchence's final days, his love affairs, and the brain injury that altered his personality.